today's webinar on Customized Employment 101, sponsored by the Missouri Employment First State Leadership Team. The Employment First State Leadership Team is a collaborative with the Division of Developmental Disabilities, Health, MoHealthNet, Rehab Services for the Blind, Vocational, and Workforce Development. In order to advance Employment First, the Office of Disability Employment Policy created the Employment First State Leadership Program. One of this initiative is technical support with building Missouri's capacity to provide customized employment. I'm Wayne Shoemate, and I'm the Director of Youth Transition Employment for the Division of Developmental Disabilities. I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'd like to begin with just a few housekeeping items. First, all participants are muted upon entry. However, it is suggested that you still mute your line on your end as well. Secondly, if you are using a headset with your computer and do have sound, you need to check that you are connected to the correct audio source. At default, may be set to something different than your headset. The info reviewed today was available in the registration resource links. If you have not found those registration resource links, post in the chat box, and we will ensure that that registration link is shared with you. In addition, we'll be recording today's webinar, so that way, if you would like to review it again in the future, it'll be available. If you do have coworkers who are not able to participate, our link will be sent out so you can share it with others. If you do have content being presented, we ask that you use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen to post those questions. If you're having issues with connectivity, things such as sound, audio, please put that information in the chat box. So again, box should be for technical difficulties. Q&A would be for questions related to the content. If you are needing closed captioning service, you can have a multimedia viewer located at the bottom right of your screen, and the captioning service will be there. At the webinar, there will be a brief survey that will open in your window. We encourage you to please complete the survey, as your feedback is important for us, and do need information from the feedback survey in order to verify with the Office of Disability Employment Policy the participants' opinions of today's presentation. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Janet Steveley. She is a Griffin-Hammis senior consultant and a subject matter expert with the Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Program. Janet is a senior consultant with Griffin-Hammis working on lead customized employment initiatives, the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for veterans with disabilities, and various projects around customized employment and benefits planning. Since 2009, Janet has operated Workable Solutions, a consulting firm based in Ashland, Oregon, that serves the employment network under Social Security's Ticket to Work program. She is a special education teacher and specialist. She has worked on state and national technical assistance projects around employment and transition services. Janet is well versed in microenterprise development and an expert in optimizing public benefits, help newest individuals achieve employment goals through planning to achieve self-support. And with that, we will turn it over to Janet.
Thank you, Dwayne, and thank you to the whole team for organizing this webinar series. And I just wanted to say I'm really excited to meet you all in June. And customized employment is just a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Like Dwayne said, I'm a former teacher and transition specialist, and also worked as a job developer, placing folks that were being served through vocational rehabilitation or the Commission for the Blind in my state, which is Oregon. I live in Oregon. You know, when I started doing that, I was extremely frustrated because trying as hard as I could to help people get jobs, and I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, and I felt there was a ton of pressure because all my job seekers wanted their jobs yesterday, and all their family members wanted the jobs yesterday. And, you know, I'm trying to, do a good job for the rehab counselors that are referring clients to me, and it just felt like a lot of pressure. And when I about customized employment, I just realized it just was some tools, and that's what I needed. I needed some good tools that would really help me get past that, just, knocking on doors and putting in applications and being told no all the time. So this is the first in a 5-part series. Oops, let me get over here. Okay, here we go. This is the first in a 5-part webinar series. Today, we're really going to be focusing on just an overview of customized employment. And then in webinars 2 and 3, we're really going to be targeting discovery. Discovery is the first step in customized employment, and it's kind of that assessment piece of getting to know the person and getting to know their ideal conditions of employment. The 4th part is going to focus on customized job development and interest-based negotiation. So we'll get into some strategies about how to approach employers and how to negotiate jobs for people. And then after the 4th webinar is the on-site training. So June 5th through 7th will be the on-site trainings in St. Louis, Jeff City, and Kansas City. The 5th webinar actually happens after the on-site training, and that webinar is just going to focus on implementation. And I think by then, you'll have gotten far along with this, that you'll have some really good questions. Trying to ask a question there? If you need to, I keep. So let's go on to the objectives for today. Again, today's just the overview of customized employment. And as a result of this webinar, I'd like you to be able to define customized employment, to describe how customized employment differs from traditional methods of job finding, and list 4 potential outcomes of customized employment. We're going to be talking about what customized employment is and how it's different from supported employment or other approaches, because I know it gets confusing. As we have supported employment, and we have IPS supported employment, and now we're saying customized employment. Is it the same? Is it not? What's going on here? So talk a little bit more about what it is and what it's not. There we go. A little forget, but so we'll start with the definition of customized employment. Now, this definition came out of the Federal Register and was posted in 2002. It's kind of my favorite, and I think it's just really simple and clear. It says customized employment means individualizing the employment relationship between employees and employers in ways that meet the needs of both. And that's a really important point there, in ways that meet the needs of both. So what we're really seeking is a win-win situation. It matches the job seeker in the sense that it matches their interests and their skills and their ideal conditions of employment. But it also benefits the employer, because what we learned in the past is that there's no benefit to the employer, even if they start offering jobs out of the kindness of their heart, and they're not as really benefit to the business, it typically doesn't last. So we're going to be looking for jobs that really do have that win-win component. This is a more definition from the Rehab Act, as by WIO of 2014. Customized employment is defined as competitive integrated employment for an individual with a significant disability that is based on an individualized determination of the strengths, needs, and interests of the individual with a disability, also designed to meet the specific abilities of the individual with a significant disability and the business needs of the employer, carried out through flexible strategies. So again, they're getting at that win-win and using a variety of creative strategies to make that happen. I think of customized employment as an outcome for sure, but also as a set of tools and strategies that result in positive employment opportunities by matching job seekers' interests and skills and conditions of employment with that employer need. So fit as tools for the toolbox. Questions we really wanted to focus on today was, how does customized employment differ from supported employment or other approaches? So to do that, I'd just like to step back for a minute and think about the evolution of customized employment. So derived from the disability field, And as you can see from the Rehab Act definition, that it does focus on people with significant disabilities. But really, I find that it can be useful for a broad range of people with or without disabilities. But thinking early on in history, there was a time when people with disabilities tended to be institutionalized, and they really weren't expected to work. So at that time, there was really no employment. But as on, we realized that people could provide and contribute to the society. And so sheltered workshops sprang up as a place where people could work in a group setting with support that they needed to be successful. But the idea of the sheltered workshop was always that would train people in the sheltered workshop, and eventually they would be placed in community jobs. However, that hasn't really happened. I mean, when you look at data of how many people really moved out of the sheltered workshops, not very many. So we created what we called supported employment as a way to get people working in the community, but with the support they needed. So at the time, in the 80s, we defined supported employment, and still defined this way, as competitive work in integrated settings for individuals with severe handicaps for whom competitive employment has not traditionally occurred. But there are three components to that. That supported employment involved real work and real pay. It wasn't made-up work. It was the pay that was commensurate with what other people were getting paid for the same work. It was rated in the sense that we're working alongside others without disabilities, and that third component of ongoing support. It had to have all three. The very center of that diagram would represent supported employment in the sense that it has to have all three to be considered supported employment, because if it's real work and it's integrated, but there's no ongoing support, we just consider that competitive employment, right? That doesn't need to be supported. If it's work and real pay and there's ongoing support, but it's not integrated, we'd call that employment. And it has ongoing support, but it's not real work or real pay, we'd probably call that volunteer work or, kind of training setting. So let's have all three to be considered supported employment. True that as we started implementing supported employment, we learned a lot of things. First of all, what ended up happening early on was a lot of group placements were occurring, where there were larger crews or enclaves. And you can understand how this happened, that people were focusing on to provide support to as many people as possible, right, to get people in community jobs. But then what happened is everybody had to go where the crew or the enclave went, and it wasn't really based on individual interests or individual needs. And oftentimes, too, what happened is that the people who were most skilled on the crew, even to leave and to get a different job, the agency sort of needed them to manage the crew, because they were the people that were getting the most work done or the people that were most independent. So what I learned is that we really need to approach this one person at a time. We always say one person, one job. That we learned from the past is like I said, sheltered workshops were originally developed as a place where we could train people and then place them in community jobs. But we know people with significant disabilities don't generalize well. If they learn one setting, they don't necessarily perform in another setting when the cues might be a little different or the expectations might be a little different. So we really need to place people on jobs and train them there in the actual environment where they're going to be working. So that is place and train versus train and place. We need to negotiate tasks around what people can do versus to fit them into existing job descriptions. And I think this is where I was getting so frustrated as a job developer, is I was trying to fit people into existing job descriptions that really didn't fit, square peg round hole kind of thing. They could maybe do the job, but maybe not all the job. of course, we always talk about job carving and some strategies like that, but I realized there needed to be a bigger focus on figuring out what people can do. Figure out ways to support workers longer term in community jobs. So there's much more need for things like systematic instruction, use of assistive technology, and use of natural support, which are all components of customized employment. So my employment really stands on the shoulders of supported employment. I mean, it's based on the same values that everyone can work given the right job and given the right support, but some added tools and strategies that can really help employment specialists. The first of those is what we call discovery, which is the assessment piece of customized employment. So it's ways of really getting to know individual strengths and contributions and those conditions of employment that we all have, but that people really need to be successful. Another is really identifying business needs. And rather than just trying to match people to jobs, to really get in and get to know business owners and get to know what needs that they have that they may not even recognize they have. We'll be talking about that piece a lot in session 4. To negotiate specific job duties that create a win-win situation. When I thought what's different with customized employment versus supported employment, I think negotiated duties is a big piece of that. And also, customized employment really focuses on utilizing people's social capital and natural support. So it's all about who you know into the job. There we go. And some polling questions into the PowerPoint here to make this a little more interesting. So you should be able to see this on the side panel, and we'd like to just go and click to answer these questions. The first question is, how do you get your first job? Was it by responding to posted job openings? Was it through a family member or friend? Was it part in a work experience or internship, or because you knew the employer or a family business or some other way? And so think about your first job. I mean, and you can define that any way you want. If that was, babysitting or doing the newspapers, or your first job actually got a paycheck. What has responded to that one? And her, I just paused for a minute while that's coming up. While you're filling that in, I'm going to just read through the next one. There's a poll number 2 that will come up in a moment, and that is about who taught you your first job. Did you already have the skills and knowledge to perform the job? Did your employer provide formal orientation and training? Supervisor or co-workers teach you how to do the job? Other. So in that poll as well. I'm on and talk while you're doing the poll. If Becky let me know. But so while you're doing that, to compare and contrast a little bit, I like how customized employment is different from a traditional approach, because really it's meant to circumvent this more traditional approach. So traditionally, what we've done, and this is certainly what I was doing as a new job developer, is I was, using some formal assessments. I was helping people get resumes together, practice interviewing, and then helping them identify and respond to posted job ads, whether that was through the public workforce system or the ones in the paper or Craigslist or wherever, and then helping people with applications and interviews. And what I found was this just isn't working. And because when the strategy, the question of the employer is who's the best person to fit the job description. and get a ton of applicants, and it has barriers to employment. They up on the top of the stack. So finding this process to be very, very competitive, and the folks I was working with didn't necessarily compete well. Customized approach with discovery, which again is a type of assessment, but it's really at getting to know the person and getting to know that person's interests and skills and contributions and what's going to be a good job for them. So by the time you get through discovery, you should have a pretty idea of where to go. Discovery results in a vocational profile that summarizes that information. We include, too, portfolios or some kind of picture or video resume that helps describe people's talents and highlights their strengths. It also includes informational interviews and going out and talking to employers and using people's connections to get in the door. When a match is found between a person's skills and employer needs, then we are actively proposing employment. So waiting for a job posting, it's more proactively proposing employment, because now the question to the employer is, can one person meet one or more of my identified needs? And that's a different question for the employer. So I see some of the poll questions, answers coming up. And see, by far, the category that got the most votes, or how people found their jobs, was through friends and family. And we have some responses from the other ones. So know that, friendly is a way that lots of us find jobs, particularly our first jobs, because when you think about it, when first jobs, we maybe don't have a lot of experience, we don't have a lot to put on a resume, those kinds of things. So we really depend on our social connections. Question number 2, it looks like the majority of you learned your first jobs by your supervisors or your coworkers teaching you the task you needed to know. You didn't have to know all the skills. You didn't have to know how to do the job or have all the skills going in. They are used to training people. They do that. They're used to having people come in that don't have the skills, and sometimes they even prefer to teach them that way. So I like to get people thinking about their first jobs, because it does really, I think, kind of set the tone for, that we get jobs through our social connections, and we don't have to have all the skills when we start. We can learn them as we go. So very good on that. Here's a little information, the hidden job market. The traditional approach is sometimes difficult for people is to think about it. 80% of all jobs never formally get advertised. Employers tend to hire people that are referred by other employees, or if they can avoid that whole hiring process, they save themselves a lot of time and money, and they're getting referrals from people who they know and trust that this person might do a good job. They say there's slightly different statistics out there, but approximately 60% of people are looking for work, jobs through the help of family, friends, and acquaintances. And this isn't even necessarily their first jobs, but it's like what you all said, this is kind of a main way that people get jobs. It really is kind of about who you know, a little bit about what you know, but who you know is really important. So employers are often more willing to hire somebody that's recommended. So a lot of jobs never get posted to begin with. Very good. Get to go again. So who customized employment help, do you think? If it's people that experience intellectual and developmental disabilities, people who have mental health disabilities, people who have involvement with the justice system, and live in rural environments with limited job opportunities, or any experiencing barriers to employment. I'm going to while you're filling this out, and we'll come back to that question. Yes.
We will bring the poll up for you to view here in a second, and if we pull it too quickly for us or for you, just let us know, and we'll bring it back up.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We're figuring this out as we go, so it's working pretty well so far. So I talk about customized versus traditional approaches. I don't by any means, want to indicate that a traditional approach is bad. I mean, like many of you said, you got your first job through, respond to a job ad. Or it's not that it's a bad approach. It just doesn't work for everybody. If you're somebody that doesn't compete well against a lot of other candidates, this is where I was struggling, is because I kept using the same strategy and it wasn't working, and I didn't know what else to do. So when I looked at customized employment, it really opened my eyes to a different way of going about job search. So it's that, it's not that it's a good strategy, bad strategy. It's just apples and oranges. So customized employment does not involve, this is important too, what it's not. It doesn't involve group placement. So we really stick to the idea of one person, one job. It's really easy. Say we get somebody a job somewhere, it's really easy to say, oh, well, maybe we get so-and-so a job there too. Or we have somebody start a business. Well, maybe they can employ 3 more people with disabilities. It's not about group at all. I think one person, one job. Job placements are at least minimum or the prevailing wage for the job. So anything less than that is not considered customized employment. So fitting the job seeker into an existing job description is really, there's nothing customized about that. I mean, fine, if the job seeker can do the job around the existing job description, that's fine, but it's probably not customized then, because customization really is about that negotiation with employers about job duties. Typically, reliance on large companies or companies with high turnover is not a very customized approach. I know, like when we started doing supported employment, we thought we'd really just, help out the fast food industry, because that was a very high turnover industry, and we're approaching people with the idea that, hey, we've got people who will stay in jobs. You won't have to do retraining over and over and over. But what we found is all different too, and so people didn't have the long-term support they needed to be successful there. Larger companies are fine if you can through the process. Typically, large companies have HR divisions, they have really set job descriptions, they don't like to deviate from the job description, and what we do is it is sometimes too frustrating to go that route. Also, run job seekers through a pre-established set of work experiences is not a customized approach, and a lot of people, especially schools, probably do that they have some pre-established work experience sites everybody gets rotated through. But in customized employment, we really look at developing those kinds of sites around each person's individual interest. So it's pre-established, it probably isn't customized. I'm going to pause a second and see if there's any questions. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to pull up that box. I don't see any questions. If you have a question, go ahead in the chat box. And then I'll just continue.
And if you do, type them in the Q&A box instead of the chat box.
Q&A, okay.
Or you can also raise your hand and we can look at unmuting you as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep, there will be another, just go ahead and type in anytime you do have a question. I wanted to continue with some of the potential outcomes of customized employment and give you some examples of each. So first of all, there's 4 potential outcomes of customized employment. 2 wage employment outcomes, and 2 are self-employment outcomes, because customized employment does sometimes result in self-employment for people. Under the wage employment outcomes, I'll have what we call both negotiated jobs and resource ownership. Self-employment, we have microenterprise and a business within a business. So I'll go pause for a minute because the polling question came up. I said the majority of you responded, anyone experiencing barriers to employment. And it's true. I mean, it certainly applies to all of these groups, but it's kind of, the above, right? And there's lots of reasons people have barriers to employment other than disability. It might be involvement with the justice system. It might be English skills. It might be just, medical appointments or life circumstances, like people have responsibilities for kids or elderly parents, or things that sort of a challenge to employment in the way that we typically see it. That things have to be a little more customized and individualized around what works for them. So it really is a strategy.
We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
If you're able to see those.
Here we go. Has customized employment proven to be more successful during times of low unemployment rates? Well, one thing I will say is that unemployment for people with disabilities don't seem to vary much whether the economy is good or the economy is bad. So that's one of the reasons when we look about, the hidden job. You would think that in times when unemployment rates are low, that people, they have more success in getting people jobs. But it doesn't seem to do this. It's to kind of stay flat regardless of what unemployment rates are. I think customized employment has been proven to be more successful in general at getting people jobs. So I don't know if I quite answered your question, but I'll try. We also have a question here. When you commented about pre-established set of work experience sites, are you referring to partnering with the same businesses or same skill development? I think what happens a lot is that for assessment purposes, especially, AGs or schools might set up, let's say, just for example, 3 different work experience sites. One's at the hospital, and one's at the, in the school cafeteria, and one's at, someplace else. And leading people through those sites as assessment, whereas discovery really looks more individually at each person. Like for instance, if somebody really has an interest in, say, working with children, we'd want experience working with children, or, through pieces of discovery, get them out and working with kids, as opposed to going through the preset sites that may not have anything to do with kids. So we want to make sure we're focusing it on what people are interested in, what we're learning about them. Okay, any more there?
Janet, there's been above Carrie inquiring about the length of time of customized employment versus support employment and the length of time of the process.
How long have you seen? You're referring to how long the jobs are lasting. I don't know if there's any formal data on that. Some data that we have, and this has been collected through Easter Seals of Southern California, is the customized employment. They're finding that this process is taking a little longer. They're spending more time up front. That it's cut off, they said, roughly a third of the time they're spending in job development. So that's a little bit of data there. I mean, how long customized employment, customized jobs are lasting versus supported employment, I'm not sure that we have any data on that. But something really interesting to look at. Missouri to collect some on that. How about that? Options. Okay, so we talked. Let me go back for just a second, just to review. We had these 4 potential outcomes of customized employment: the jobs, resource ownership, microenterprise, and a business within a business. So I want to go on and tell you a little bit about each one and what that looked like. So in the job, I think we were all pretty familiar with the idea of job carving, looking at a job description and kind of negotiating around the pieces that the person can do and trying to shift the other pieces to a coworker or somebody else. But this also includes what we call job creation. Creation is a little different in that it maybe there wasn't a job description or maybe even somebody doing the job. I'll give you an example. Here's Debbie, and Debbie was leaving high school. We did about her through discovery is that she was very into organizing things. She liked a very clean, structured environment. She was on the autism spectrum. And to get to work, she needed to use the bus, and the bus only ran on the weekdays. So some of her conditions then were it was clean, structured, weekdays on the bus route. And looking for office kinds of jobs for her, and we stumbled upon this company called Ramsell. And when we went to talk to them, we talked to the customer service supervisor. And I was thinking, this probably isn't really who we should be talking to because Debbie is nonverbal. She doesn't talk. When I think about customer service, I think about, pretty interactive jobs. But we chatted with her for a while. And she, what customer service reps do, they sold phone packages over the phone. And at one point in the discussion, we said, is there anything that doesn't get done around here? She said, oh, yeah, filing the word around here, kids to come in and file. And she kind of went on about it for a little bit. So we finished the interview, and she took us on a tour, and we landed in the filing room. And sure enough, there was a fairly large room filled with 4-drawer file cabinets with about a foot of paperwork on top of each one that hadn't been filed. We said, hey, I'm not kidding. What's going on with the filing here? And long story short, what it turned out to be is that customer service reps got paid commission when they were on the phone selling phone packages. And there wasn't any opportunity to earn commission when they were room filing. So the phone wasn't getting done. So a week later, we went back and said, hey, why don't you consider hiring Debbie to do filing? Oh, the other thing I learned is that everything was filed by phone number, not alphabetically, which I think alphabetical filing would have been a very difficult skill for Debbie. But phone number, she was pretty good at matching numbers, and there were about 5 prefixes in that community. So she could kind of do this pre-sort, and then we figured out a way to, further subdivide them. So at least when she had a stack of paper, it was all going to the same file drawer and not running all over the file room. So we wanted it to the company. We said, why don't you consider hiring Debbie to file paperwork, and these are the benefits to you. First, it increases your efficiency because you can do your paperwork when you need it, which is a seemingly important thing. B, could help you make money because your customer service reps are spending more time on the phone and less time in the filing room. And C, improves employee morale because obviously the customer service reps don't want to do this anyway. And so, when it was presented like that, it was like a no-brainer to them. Like, yes, of course we'll hire Debbie part-time to do this. She worked about 20 hours a week and worked there for a couple of years. That was her first job out of high school, and it was a first job for her. Resource owner is a negotiated job, too, with one twist. And the twist is that the individual, the job seeker, is bringing something to the company, helps them, that's more work. Because what we know is businesses don't hire people when they're not making money. People hire people when they make money, when business is good. So sometimes bringing something to that business, and it's typically a piece of equipment, but it could be else. It could be some specialized training or something that helps that business extend their services so that they can hire somebody. If it's equipment, then operating the equipment generally becomes the duty of the individual, but about it as an economic development approach. It's meant to be a win-win. And when I first heard about this, I thought, well, that's just buying somebody a job. But it's not that unusual. I mean, I'm sure many of you are required to have college degrees for your job. That set that you paid for that cost you a good money. Similarly, many of you may be required to have an automobile job, which also is a big ticket asset. In some professions, people are expected to bring their own tools, so it's not that different than the rest of us. So having a piece of equipment might open up some real possibilities for people. Here's this is Scott's ice cream, and we'll talk themes later. But he had a culinary theme. He was into food. In fact, he was working at a restaurant, and he wanted hours, and the restaurant owners couldn't offer that. They liked Scott. They were happy with his work, but they just couldn't put more hours given the income, business income. So when we sat and talked to the owners about, what could help them generate income so that they could give Scott more hours, some of that was that they were purchasing desserts from another company. Because they were purchasing it from another company, there was a pretty small markup on desserts. Where they think if they could make their own desserts, that would create more revenue that would allow them to hire somebody. So long and short of it, and this is actually one of the assignments for this time, is to read a couple of short articles, and one is about Scott's ice cream. So what it allowed him to do is to purchase an ice cream machine, more hours of work for him, and then they actually sort of branded the ice cream as Scott's ice cream, and into the resource ownership strategy, it also then created a small business opportunity for him because he later started selling it at other places. So resource ownership is a wage outcome. The employer is still paying the person a wage, but they bring that piece of equipment. Now in Scott's case, there was a variety of sources that went into that. Vocational rehabilitation kicked in. He also used a PASS plan and a PASS stands for Plan to Achieve Self-Support, and it's a way people can get me for things that they need. Include resource ownership. He also had some personal investment in the ice cream machine, and the employer kicked in a little bit too. So it was just a nice blending of funds to help pay for that equipment. Here's another resource ownership. Chelsea was very interested in working with kids and also very interested in technology, and had to do a work experience with in the public schools, teaching them to use iPads. And they approached the school about hiring Chelsea, but they really didn't have the funds built into the project for that that kind of position or for the iPads. So as a result of the negotiation around this, Rehab and some special project funds were used to purchase a set of iPads, then were used to negotiate the job for Chelsea. So she was hired by the school district to work with kids on iPads, and she loves her job, and it's just a really cool win-win for both the employer and the employee. So the wage employment options are negotiated jobs or resource ownership. Now I want to shift to the other side for a minute, the self-employment outcomes, which is yes.
We have a couple of questions. One in the queue from Max.
Yes, I need to scroll down a little bit. Okay.
And there's also a question in the chat box as well.
Okay. So Max's question is, for customized employment, do you still use job coaches, mentors? If so, is there a rule of thumb on how long until you're paid? Yeah, I mean, yes, we do try to promote natural supports as much as possible. Often there is a need to have a job coach there too, but the job coach's role changes a bit. I think that we're really trying to be a consultant to both the business and to the employee. So we want to just jump in and take over training for the business, but really support the business in doing the training with the new employee to the extent possible. I mean, the rule of thumb on fading is always, fade as soon as you can, but that certainly varies across people. Some people are going to need you there, longer. But again, if you go in, if you can negotiate the job with the employer saying, oh, we'll provide all the training, then it's hard to get out of there because you establish the expectation that you're going to be there. If you start the negotiations with, we will support you in providing the training, it sets a really different tone. I see a question here about, could you provide more information about how to assist a client in utilizing a PASS plan? Probably not today, but, and Dwayne, maybe you can speak at this at the end of the webinar, is that we're also be doing a similar series like this on Social Security work incentives, and PASS is one of those Social Security work incentives. It is a very, very cool way and very, very underutilized way of getting funds for people to help them achieve their work goals, leading to self-support, which means leading to a reduction or elimination of Social Security benefits.
Jan indicated we will be having a 5-part webinar series in July and August on utilization of PASS plans, impairment-related work expenses, and how to do benefits planning. And combinations for that will be probably within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, for that, because it really is a cool thing. And let's see, you said there was a question. See a question chat box.
How do you convince employers to add an extra position in a tight economy?
We'll talk a lot about that in session 4, but it is about getting at their needs. If you can show a business that you bring some value to them, or that can bring some value to their business, that's the stuff that employers listen to. If idea about resource ownership, if there's something that can help them generate more income, they're all ears. It's really very funny how some certain questions can turn employers listening around. And we'll get into more detail on that on the 4th webinar. But let me go ahead and finish on self-employment, and then I think we'll have time for a few more questions. So self-employment, I always say it's potentially for anyone, but it's not for everyone. But you really increase the range of options and opportunities for success. Like if, especially in like tight economies or in very rural environments where there may not be as many opportunities, people have to get more creative. They have to be more creative. And it's also one way for people who receive SSI and or Medicaid to accumulate wealth. Because we know, and maybe you know this, but people with SSI and Medicaid have a $2,000 resource limit. And so people are always having to spend their money. They can't accumulate money because they have to spend it so that they can get their medical benefits or, keep their residential placement or keep the services that you provide. But people who get SSI or Medicaid are self-employed. They can accumulate money in a business account, and it has to be an active business account. And so it builds up, and it can be more than $2,000. And there's an exclusion for that. They call PES, or Primary Essential to Self-Support. So they can build up that wealth there and count against their $2,000 resource limit. Think about this. If somebody was self-employed and, they're building up in their business account, and then let's say they wanted to buy a car. Well, a car is an excludable resource. A home that they live in, they could use that money as a down payment on a home. So it's a way that people can accumulate wealth. It used to really kind of be the only way. Now that we have ABLE accounts coming out, there's some different ways to do that. But I don't want to dwell on that too much. Let's just go on and polling question for you. And go ahead and pull up. Entrepreneurs must be able to handle all aspects of the business. Entrepreneurs must be able to write a business plan. Entrepreneurs work many more hours than wage employees. And with disabilities have a harder time accessing sources of funding for small business, loans and things like that. Go ahead and indicate truth or myth. Looking at the poll, if
As this poll is being completed, just to kind of let you know on time, I think got 9 slides and we've got about 9 minutes remaining.
Okay, I'm moving. I will on. It doesn't look like there's a true or false option. Maybe just check it if you think it's false. Check it if you, okay? And talk about microenterprise. So microenterprise are very, very small businesses. I mean, think about the businesses that are owner-operated or employing 5 or fewer workers. So we're really talking about small operations. In 2018, which is the most current data I can get, there are almost 29 small businesses in the U.S. 23 million of those had no employees, so sort of single operator kinds of businesses. So microenterprise is really the backbone of the U.S. job creation, right? It's many, many, many more small businesses out there than there are large businesses. So interestingly, people with disabilities have had opportunities to become business owners. What we find is it's generally not people that are saying, I want to be a business owner. It's people that they're just particularly interested in providing a particular product or a particular service. This kind of matches who we are, right? So self-employment might be considered when people's interests and skills and conditions of employment really match a good business idea or opportunity. So for people who have the needed supports to establish that. And that sometimes I think is the harder piece is, if people have a great idea, but sometimes they don't have the support to really make it happen. So we need to think through all those things before going on the self-employment route. Here's an example. This is one of the first people I worked with on self-employment. And Alan, he's kind of this rough, tough guy, but when he talked about plants, he just got really soft and gentle. It was very sweet. But his conditions of employment were first of all, a late morning or afternoon start. And it wasn't because he was lazy and didn't want to get out of bed. It was because he had a severe seizure disorder and took medication that just made him so groggy in the morning he couldn't function. So we knew it was going to be a condition of employment for him. Also, he used a wheelchair, so he needed an accessible work site. He preferred to be outside. And we tried wage employment. We had him doing a work experience in a large nursery setting where there was big aisles that were paved, so it was easy to get a wheelchair through. And he was watering plants there, but early in the morning, which is what stuff happens. So it wasn't working for him because of that. At one point, we said, this isn't working. And he done really good. He had a lot of medical issues, so good days, bad days. I said, he lives in a group home that has this huge, huge yard. Maybe we should think about self-employment as an opportunity. So we initially helped him start this business growing trees, thinking that he was going to grow trees and then go sell them at the farmer's market. And this is a long time ago, and I've learned a lot since then. Trees grow really slow, and farmers markets happen early in the morning too, so it didn't work. But at one point, we got a new person on the team who happened to be a master gardener, and he's self-employed himself. And the first thing he did with Alan is he took him out and started talking to some of the nurseries and places in town that sold plants about what they needed. And what they said is, we don't need trees, we need ground covers. Ground covers flying out of here like hotcakes. So we amended his past, and we helped him change up the business to where he was growing ground covers. So Voc Rehab, and he also used a past plan, and to purchase the greenhouse and the materials to get started, and had a lot of support from both his employment staff but also from the group home staff to help with that. I'm looking at your responses to the polls. Actually, I would say all of those are false. I think we didn't get it. It's probably a little confusing with the true false things. But if you go to these questions, I'm going to slip back for just a second here. That entrepreneurs must be able to handle all aspects of the business. All aspects of the business need to be handled, but most entrepreneurs don't do everything themselves. Most people who are self-employed have other people that help them. Either they contract it out, or maybe have family members that help with their website or help with marketing or things like that. So people have to be able to do it all themselves, but they do have to be able to figure out how to get it all done. Entrepreneurs must be able to write a business plan. I think of this much like job development. If people need support to find a job, it's because that's not their skill set. They might be very good at doing certain tasks, but the finding the job piece isn't what they're good at. The same thing applies to business planning. Somebody can have a really good business idea and be really good at providing that product or service, but need help and support writing the business plan. It's just that's a completely different skill set. And we can provide support for people through that. Entrepreneurs work many more than wage employees. I know lots of self-employed people who work a lot of hours, myself being one of them. I also know a lot of wage-employed people who work an awful lot of hours. So if the number of hours is a consideration for this person, which it might be, due to medical appointments or stamina or things, people might have to say, I can only work X number of hours a week. Then the question is, can we make this work in X number of hours a week and generate the kind of income that the person needs to generate? So, and that could be true of wage employment too, is that they just need to limit the hours to what they can do. So again, that's false. And people with disabilities have a harder time accessing sources of funding for small businesses. That could be true. I mean, what I find is that people have trouble accessing things because they might have limited credit or bad credit history or things like that. But entrepreneurs with disabilities also have access to things like that and other opportunities that people without disabilities may not have. And one last thing here, this idea of a business within a business. Think about a company that's under the host business, sort of like Best Buy. Best Buy is the host business, and we've got the geeks in the corner, but they're separate businesses, but they have the same customer base, and they offer complementary products and services. So if I go to Best Buy to buy a computer, I go right there and I need my data transferred, the geeks are right there. Similarly, if I go to the geeks and my computer's broken and they say, hey, it's not worth fixing, I can buy a computer at Best Buy. So this can provide really cool options for people with disabilities because some of that support is already built in. Here's a few examples of a business within a business. And we're getting close to time here, so I'm going to skip up one. I think we'll just skip this one too. Let's just skip that poll question. Let's skip this. We'll come back to them. Just some next steps. Just think about, who you work with, the trainers you work with, and who's not doing well with the traditional process. Think about them and think who might be a good candidate for custom customized employment. And as we move through the webinars and the on-site training, switch about that person and think about the steps you would take with that person. So, this should, I think, show up, Dwayne help out there, that shows up after they sign off of the webinar. But we have some okay, so we do have some evaluation questions to ask. If you'd please do that, we'd really appreciate it.
Correct. Once you close out of the webinar, then the survey will pop up in your window.
Awesome. So I'm here for any final questions. I'll go to Q&A here, see if there's any more. And I know we're at time, so do you have any last things you'd like to say?
What we can do, Janet, is we can include those other poll questions as part of the registration questions for next week's webinar. That way we can get feedback from folks on those poll questions.
Okay.
I would like to thank everybody for their participation in today's webinar, as this is the first of a 5-part series. We're learning not just customized employment, but we're also learning how to navigate this webinar platform. So I appreciate everyone's patience as we chat. I see a couple of questions about the homework assignments. That information will be in the resource link in folders attached associated with each of the webinars. We will be sending out a new registration link for webinars 2, 3, and 4. And those should be coming out probably today or early next week. Other questions are, can we have Ms. Steveley's contact info? And it's on the screen right now.
Yeah. This time, it's just a couple of very short articles to look at. One is called What's Customized About It, and I think it's 1 page. And the other one is an article about the Scott's ice cream story. So again, they're very don't stress about it, but be helpful.
Okay. And if you do have questions, you can definitely email on the address here, and we will also have contact information uploaded to the resource page. And again, next week we'll send out the registration for 2, 3, and 4. We'll also be coordinating with individuals on the location for the on-site training, which will occur the first week of June. And, if there are any questions that weren't able to be asked today, we will make sure that they get answered next week. Question here, will you email out the times and days of each webinar? That should be in the initial training announcement that you received. Each of the webinars are the Fridays of May from 10 a.m. until 11 o'clock a.m. And then the 5th webinar is on June 22nd at 10 o'clock a.m. We will be having instant training that first full week of June. It'll be Wednesday, Thursday of that week, beginning in St. Louis, then going to Jefferson City, and then on to Kansas City. And how we get to the articles, the resource link, and we will make sure we email that link back out to anyone who signed up to participate in this webinar series. So, we will ensure that that gets emailed back out to everybody who participated today. All right, we will end today's session. Thank you once again for your participation. Please complete the survey results that pop up as you exit, and we will speak with you next Friday at 10 o'clock a.m.
Thanks so much.